unpacking a lot of that like trauma and a lot of that miscommunication and a lot of falling outs with my dad for me to say, okay, like I understand where those come from and I understand why I reacted and why he did what he did, and we all did the best we could at the time. And now here I am. And I forgive him for all of it. I forgive myself for all of it. And now what do I do? Because I love him and I want to honor him in ways that I couldn't. I was not able to. I did not have the tools, the capability, and the capacity to do that while he was here. So how do I do it now?
Hello, and welcome to Grief, Gratitude, and the Gray in Between podcast. This podcast is about exploring the grief that occurs at different times in our lives, in which we have had major changes and transitions that literally shake us to the core and make us experience grief. I created this podcast for people to feel a little less hopeless and alone in their own grief process as they hear the stories of others who have had similar journeys. I'm Kendra Rinaldi, your host. Now, let's dive right into today's episode. Welcome to today's episode. Today, I have the pleasure of chatting with my new friend, Angela Gentile. Angela and I connected via Instagram. Lately, I feel like I've connected with several people on that platform. It's interesting with grief how you kind of just extend your circle because you do end up realizing that other people that have gone through grief experiences or are in that journey of grief really can relate to what you're going through. So you extend this circle of friendships and connections in that platform, which has been a really interesting journey for myself. So, Angela, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I think I love that you said that Instagram, for all of its faults, for all of the negativity sometimes, like
Mm.
there is beauty in it if especially using it to connect in times of struggle and need and to just gather information. And I think especially when we're grieving, it can be a very lonely and isolating process, especially in your circle of friends if you're processing in a way that
The only one.
might not make sense to other people. It's really nice to connect when you see something familiar and, oh, I feel that way too. So I just appreciate you having
Mm-hmm.
these kinds of conversations and inviting me to join. So thanks. Thanks for having me.
I'm so grateful that you are here. I'm so grateful that you're here. So tell us a little bit about you. I know you were a teacher for many years,
Yes.
and then kind of shifted. So let's talk a little bit about what you do, the what you did and do
Yeah,
now,
sure.
and then
Well,
we'll go into other stuff.
it's quite an evolution. So I was kind of the worst, best public school teacher that there ever was.
Yeah.
um,
Okay, wait. Let the worst, best.
yeah, yeah.
Let
Like
I
I
love
was I was a
that.
really creative and powerful energy. I always have been. I think I came out the womb like that. My poor mother and father like just had to they had their hands full with me. I'm a Leo, so like, you hear me before you see me kind of thing. So, yeah, I was a public school teacher at high school.
Wait.
For the majority of my time here, or in teaching, spent in Boston and in the Boston public school system. So, yeah, like I had a lot of great ideas. I had a lot of creative things to do. I was really passionate about like learning and inspiring. And I think what happened over time is I really got pigeonholed, and a lot of that creativity got um, subdued. And it was
Mm, mhm.
I think when I was on and I was great, like I had wonderful connections with my students, and I still do. I still talk to them. I still see them. They reach out all the time. So that was beautiful. But I think over time, the more I the more I grew up and kind of like started to get into myself a little bit, I started teaching, God, when I was like 22, 23, I was a fetus,
You're a
you know?
kid, yeah,
I was a
yeah.
teaching
You
high
got out
school,
of
like,
college early then. Yeah,
yeah,
how
maybe
old were
I
you when you
was
got out of high school then?
I was 18, so let me think, like 24,
Okay,
23 when I started teaching.
yeah,
So
no,
I
that
had
yeah, you
like
went straight, yeah, no, that makes sense,
just
yeah.
graduated. So Yeah, and I think as I grew up and started to kind of unfold myself, I realized like I was not meant to be in this job, and it was square peg, round hole. And I'm a really creative person, but I am
Mhm.
not an employee. I'm a boss. And the more that I get told what to do and the more I
And
look around, I'm like, I could do your job better. I don't want to play by the rules. And over time, I just got really angry, really burnt out, really bitter. And I was like, I don't want to do X, Y, and Z. I want to do A, B, and C. And those lives didn't really cross. So it wasn't a match anymore. And I think that's what happens, with a lot of things that you start really young. And as you mature and grow, some things just don't necessarily grow along with you, whether that's jobs, relationships, places, hobbies, etc. So, yeah, and I think I didn't really
what
realize
you're
like
saying
how
is amazing.
yeah,
What
yeah,
you're saying right now is so amazing because yes, you're right. It fits into so many different things, but so many
yeah,
people end up just trying and trying to fix it or like to become then the square in the round peg, or
yeah,
mold into
that's
that
it
to be able to fit. And it's like feels so out of alignment and
for sure.
people feel unfulfilled, but it's because you really are not living in your true self.
Absolutely.
So what shifted? At what point did you're like, whoa, I need to get out?
Mm, Well, I think there are several instances where the world was just giving me like little love taps on the shoulder, being like, "Hey, girl,
Mhm.
you might want to listen to these nasty things that are happening right now and like make a shift." Like I would get in trouble. I would be very
Mhm.
reactive. I have a personnel file, whatever. I was
Mhm.
just angry.
Mm,
And I think the more that I was stuffing myself down, oppressing who I was miserable. And that shows like the students didn't deserve that. I shouldn't have been there. I should have left. You know what I mean? So over time, like I just wasn't listening and I was just unhappy, but I didn't know what to do. And it was sort of that situation in the movie Mean Girls when it's like, stop trying to make fetch happen, Gretchen. And I was like, I don't know what to do. I didn't know what else to do
oh
with
my
my
gosh,
life.
it's
So I
been
just,
so long since I've seen that.
yeah, but
It's
we
been
know
so
the
long since I've
reference.
seen that movie, like No,
um,
I don't even remember that reference. I'm gonna have to go see it
Oh my god, stop
again.
trying to make fetch happen,
So,
Gretchen.
yeah.
So then I had this moment where I was like trying to do different things. I started a fitness business in grad school that I was just kind of like meandering around playing with as sort of like a side hustle. And I was like, I might
Mhm,
be onto something, but I really wasn't ready to make the jump into doing like fitness and running my own business full time. I didn't believe that I had something substantial to offer. And like I said, the world just kind of kept showing up. And the big thing that caused me to like multiple 360s, like spin out car crash and look at my life was when my dad died. I lost my dad in December of 2015 of a sudden aneurysm.
so tell me, so, okay, so you had been in grad school. While you were in grad school, were you also still teaching at that moment?
Oh yeah, I was doing all the things. I was
Or
because
you're
I
teaching
just
all of it at the same time?
yeah, because I just kept thinking like it has to be me, right? Like it's not the
Mm,
job. It must be something wrong with me so that I can why can't I do this job? Like being in an abusive relationship, you're like, "Oh, it must be me." Nah, baby girl, he's an
mhm,
asshole. Get out. Like this isn't you. But I think
mhm,
I thought if I just did more
mhm,
and like got more qualified, had this thing, like did this lesson, took this trip, got this certification, like everything, it was all external. Everything was external rather than facing like the internal things that were going on and the complications of my own trauma and my own healing within me. I just put it outward into the world until my life rocked and my dad died, and it forced me just like I said, multiple 360s, like a spin out. And I was like,
to be
what
okay,
is
so
this?
let's talk about that. Let's talk about what so, do you wanna go into, just a little bit of a picture of your relationship with your dad and then just how it was that you found out the
Mm,
news, and then we'll go into how that ended up shaping who you are now. So,
okay, sure.
you get that call, where were you on December 18th? Is that the day he got the aneurysm, or
Hmm.
was it sudden? Was it
Yep.
tell me a little bit about that.
So, there were a few days leading up to it. Like he died on a Friday, so I want to say like maybe that Monday or Tuesday, he
Mhm.
had a stroke. And my dad was only 65. And he was with
Absolutely.
my grandmother, and my grandmother saw like his face droop and was like, "Oh my God,
Mm.
911." And my dad was like, "No, we're fine." Like he didn't even, he just, I mean, that's one of the symptoms of a stroke is like to be in complete denial, like you have no idea what's happening to you.
Mm.
So they brought him to the hospital. He had a stroke, and I didn't get the phone call that he was even in the hospital. My father lived like 2 hours away from me in like the western part of Massachusetts. So I didn't get the phone
Mm.
call from his and from his wife until like 10 p.m. And I was like, "What?" Like nobody told me. And they're like, "He's fine. He's okay." And I was like, "All right, forget it.
They
I'm
didn't wanna
coming."
freak you out. Uh-huh.
I'm right, right, because I they know that I'm emotional, and then I would panic and I would like set the hospital on fire and like come in, you know. So they they waited to tell me around like 10 o'clock at night, and I called out of work. I was
Until you were
gone.
out of the until
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Were they
Until
out of the hospital at that point? They're like, "Let's call her when we're not in the hospital so she
no,
doesn't set the hospital on fire."
no, I love that because that's like what I do to my mother. I'm like, let me tell her what I'm doing, this crazy shit that I'm doing after the fact. No, they told me, I think once they realized like everything, like what was happening, like just gathering some information, before, they reached out and with next steps. So I came to the hospital like 2 hours away, um, the next day, and I was there like Tuesday, Wednesday, and yeah, and then my dad got released. Like, I mean, there's a huge long story in there, just kind of fighting with the doctors about, I don't know. They wanted to do procedure A, and I was advocating for procedure B, but because my gut instinct was telling me procedure B, and then I had to have three different
Mhm,
doctors. Like
mhm,
this Doogie Howser motherfucker came in. I was like, nope, who are you? Get out. I want the doctor. Like, I was really the pit bull
mhm,
and the Rottweiler in this room, like advocating for my dad. But I think after three different doctors and my family was like, Angela, let's just do what the doctor says, I was adamant of like, I don't like that. I don't believe that we should be doing
mhm.
procedure A. I think we should do B. Am I a doctor? Absolutely not. Like, did I go on WebMD like I was a doctor? Absolutely. I just felt something in me call to this particular. I was like, this isn't right. I don't like what you're saying. It's not right. My instinct was like red flagging it all over the place. But you know, my dad was released. Um, I went home and he was released the next day. And as he was getting out of the hospital, I called him and we chatted. And he's like, I'm quitting smoking. I was like, all right, well, finally, this is what it took. Awesome, dad. Quit smoking.
Mhm.
Great. Um, and he was like, I'm going to get my patch. I'm going to get the pills. And, that's it. And I was busy. I was like, all right, dad, that's awesome. Sounds good. I got to go. I got a jet. I'm going to teach this fitness class. I can't really talk. I'll talk to you tomorrow. I love you. And he's like, I love you too, honey.
This is
And
Thursday. This
yep,
is Thursday?
this is Thursday.
Mm.
And that's the last conversation that I had with my dad. So, and then Friday, I went to work on my routine, wash, rinse, repeat like it normally was. And then right around like 1 o'clock on that Friday, the day that he died, I had this overwhelming and compelling urge. And this was like sixth period. And I was like, I need to call my dad. I don't know where this came from.
Mm.
And I like had to stop and I was like, I can't call my dad in the middle of class right now. And I was like, hey guys, we're gonna just play some music. I was like, I'm thinking of my dad right now and I want to play some music. So I played Chicago, like the band Chicago. Um and then I was like, I gotta call my dad after class.
Mhm.
So 3 o'clock comes, my boss comes in and he's like talking to me about some crap. I have no idea. I'm like, I don't care. Like, please let me leave. I have to call my dad. And
Mhm.
then things got away from me. I was going to an event that night, like, and I was getting my hair done and all of that. I was putting gas in my car. It was right around like 5 o'clock. And I got a voicemail from my stepmom, like, once I got back into the car. And she was crying and she's like, you need to come to the hospital. And I was like, oh my God, my dad is dead. Nobody said anything. But I knew. I knew, but I didn't want to believe it.
Because you had been feeling it all day.
All day,
Because you
like
had been feeling it all day,
all
but you
day.
just yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So she, yeah. So I sat on my couch, like in disbelief. I was like, no, he's fine. No, Angela, stop thinking like that. Like he's fine. Like I didn't know anything. I didn't want to believe anything. It took me 3 hours to get into the car to drive. I had to have a friend drive me to the
Mm.
hospital and sit on my cell phone. I was like, "Sit on this. I don't wanna know. I don't wanna know.
Mm.
I don't wanna know," because I knew. You know what I mean? I
'Cause
already
if you
knew.
don't know, because it's kind of like if you don't
It's
know, it
not real.
doesn't, even though you knew exactly, even but then if
Not
you're
real.
hearing the words, then it makes it more real.
Yeah, like, if I don't go, if I don't, you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like, I was even like,
It's
"Should I
not,
just go
yeah,
to
you
this
don't have to
event?"
face it. Yeah, you don't have to
Yeah, I
face
was
it.
like, "I should just
Yeah.
shower and go to this event." Literally. You know what I mean? And
Wow,
I was
absolute like
eerily
denial, yeah,
calm.
in that moment.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I was just very calm, like disbelief. You know what I mean? So then I
Mm.
get to the hospital and, I check in and they're like, "Oh," when you see the nurses go, "Oh, that's her." And I was like, "Oh, fuck."
Mm.
So they send me into this like private room, which I didn't even know that they had like a private waiting room. And I guess it's like for people in this situation. And like my whole family was there. I was the last one. Everybody was waiting for me. And the priest was there.
Mm.
And I was like, "Are you fucking kidding me?" I was like, no, 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 no. And I am not religious, and I do mean no disrespect to anybody who is, but like that priest needed to get out of the way because I was not very nice to him, and I was like, "Let me see my father. I don't need to pray right now." Yeah. And then
Mhm.
I went into the room, and my dad was on life support. And in
Mm.
that moment, when I had my hand on the curtain and I pulled it open, there was a sound and a release that came out of me that I can't recreate, and I can't
Mm.
really explain. And it was like
Guttural,
a
guttural. Was it
guttural.
guttural completely? Yeah,
Yeah,
guttural sound.
but like part of
Yeah.
me was gone
Mm.
in that exhalation. Do you know what I mean? A part
Mm.
of my soul was like gone. And the thing I said to myself, and maybe it was out loud, I can't recall. I just said, "I forgive you." Our parents are not perfect. We are
You were
all
saying
imperfect people.
you were saying to him?
Yeah.
You were saying to him?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, "I forgive you.
Mm.
I forgive you." Like the sound, and I just like, "I forgive you." And I just said, "No, no." And I was like on my knees next to the bed. And I just had my dad's hands. Like, this is so weird. My dad, as this athlete and golfer, had literally the softest hands. I did not inherit that gene. I have like calluses and like chipped nails, like such a lady. But he had the softest hands, and
No calluses at all for him?
I swear to God,
No
nothing.
calluses from holding a golf club?
I
Wow.
swear to God, like a baby's ass, just like soft. So I just remember being like on my knees with his hands like over my face. And I was just
Mm.
like, I never want to forget what this feels like. This will be the last time I ever touch my dad. Like I hold his hands. And
Mm.
I mean, it might have, I don't really care how it looked, but like if you just imagine that scene of a 34-year-old woman on her knees next to a hospital bed with tubes and her father with his hands like all over her face, crying, sobbing,
Mm.
guttural noises, you know? Um, yeah, and then the doctor came in, and my stepmom, it was just me, my stepmom, and the doctor. And he was like, "What would you like to do?" And I was like, "What? What do you mean?" And he was like, I don't remember what he said. Whatever kind of medical jargon, whatever he was using. Basically, there was so much blood in his brain. He had a huge aneurysm, and they could try to drain the blood. And I said, "Okay." And I looked at him with every ounce of like honesty and integrity to advocate for my father. And I said, "Will he ever golf again?" And the doctor was kind of taken back and like, he wasn't being
By the
rude.
question. Mm.
Yeah, he wasn't being rude,
Mm.
but I think it was just like he was shocked at that. He just explained to me how complicated this was. And I was asking probably what was like an asinine question. And he was like, "No," just shook his head and like made a face like, "No." And I said, "Okay."
Mm.
And I said, then I looked at my
That's your
stepmom and
answer.
she was like, "What do you want to do?" And I was like, "Okay, like this is my decision." And I said, I was like, "He wouldn't want this." I was like, if he would never play golf again, like that was my dad's lifeline. That was what he did every day, all day. He was retired early so he could go and like be on the golf course all day, every day. Like he would camp there, I think, if you let him, you know?
If his
Yeah.
stepmom would let him, yeah.
Yeah.
If you're
Anybody.
his wife would let him.
Anybody would have let him, you know? Yeah. And they said no. And I'm like, that's it. Then there's no decision here. Like this is
Mm.
it. This is it. My dad won't wanna be on
How it
tubes, none of it, he wouldn't want that.
and so how long after that then did they unplug the the
Like
whole
an
machines,
hour?
the what is it called?
I
An
don't
hour
even know.
later. So
Eventually, yeah, yeah,
in that hour, you felt when you made that decision, you knew that it was a decision. You were advocating for him. So you felt at peace with that decision in that moment.
yeah, yeah, there was no other decision to make.
Oh, good, good,
Yeah, I mean, and
good.
you can go back and you can replay, like, when we look at, like, the text messages and who called him, and they're like,
Mhm.
"God, I talked to him around, like, 1 o'clock," and I was like, "Get out of here."
Mm,
So, when we look at the timeline, that when I had that moment where I was like, "I gotta call my dad," is probably when he died.
mhm.
And, you know, had I called him and had he not answered after just being released from the hospital, I would have called my stepmom. My stepmom would have come home early, would have seen him on the floor. He would have gotten to the hospital earlier. But what? Would he
That's
have
just
been
not how it yeah,
saved, like,
that's just not what it
right,
right,
drooling,
right.
like being confined to a wheelchair? Like I know that how the
Mhm.
course of events have unfolded is the way that they were supposed
Was
to.
how it had to be.
It how it had to
Yes.
be. How it had to
Yes.
be. I can't I mean, God, I could drive myself crazy of, like, blaming my boss for coming in and bombarding me with something stupid or, like, not calling, but I do think my dad was sending me a message and he was saying goodbye. I do. And I like I said, I think
Mm,
had I called, what would have been? I can't say. I know that what my life is now is because of him. And I have taken my life to mean something so much more than it was when I was sitting rotting in a classroom being miserable. And I don't know.
mm.
I think that's what he had to give to me to continue to pay it forward with his legacy through me. So I can't imagine anything
Wow.
different. I can't. I mean, obviously would I want him here?
And
Absolutely. Absolutely. I just that I can't I don't know. How do you take the life that you're in that you've like adapted to and honored and also like want it to be different? I don't know anything else other than this. Does that make sense?
what you're saying is, yeah, absolutely, it makes sense. I mean, the name of this podcast is Grief, Gratitude, and the Gray in Between. And with the part of gratitude that comes from that growth that we go through, it could be growth, whatever, or gratitude. It doesn't mean that we wish, that we're happy that
No.
somebody's passed away or that we're happy that something hard happened,
No.
but that we can see the wisdom behind that
Right.
and know that it was meant to be in that way,
Yeah.
for us to be who we are now or certain things to turn out the way that they did.
Mhm.
So how did you cope with, like, what was your first few things that you did when he died to be able to cope with your day to day and with that reality of not having him
That's tough.
present? What were some of those things that you did?
I think
Do you
it didn't
remember? Is it a
happen.
blur? Is it a
Yeah,
blur?
it didn't happen right
Yeah.
away. Like I didn't like get up and like make a green smoothie. I didn't I do remember cuz he died right before Christmas, you know? So
Mhm.
I already had
Oh,
his Christmas
yeah, that
present.
Christmas.
Yeah, under the tree. It's the only Christmas present under the
Mm,
tree, you know? And I just remember because we had so that was a Friday, and then we had to go to the funeral home, I wanna say Monday, Sunday. Yeah, and I was like, "I'm not burying my dad, like, after Christmas, like, I want like, this just needs to be, like, done. I'm not gonna drag this out."
mm, mhm,
I showed up at the funeral home, like, not showered, no bra, like, I think I was probably still wearing the same clothes
mm,
from Friday. Matter of fact, yeah, I was.
mm,
You know, I don't didn't brush my teeth, like, I di like, In a mess. I was a mess. Um, and I'm very lucky that I had a handful of really good friends who dropped everything to be with me because I was the first one. I was only 34 out of my like immediate group of friends to have lost a parent.
Circle.
So,
Mhm.
no, but like I took one for the team of like, hey guys, this is how it's going to go down. This is what it looks like, you know? Um, but yeah, I don't think my process really started until after all the logistics were done, like after the phone calls stopped and the sympathy cards stopped and the lasagna trays stopped coming, like
Mm, mm.
because all of that was just distraction and it wasn't until life resumed normalcy for everybody else and I'm standing in ashes of an old life that doesn't exist anymore and I was like, well, what the fuck? What do I do? I don't my what is my life right now? So it probably wasn't until like February, like a good 2 months after he passed when things like kind of just resumed and no phone calls and I was alone. Just me and my dog. So one of the things that I did immediately, I don't know if it was healthy, but this is like how I coped. Like I went back to work right away. I live alone, so it was just me and my dog, and I was single at the time. So I was like, I don't, what do I do? I can't sit in this house and like pace and cry. I was like, I need to go to work. And it was like a distraction, you know? But I would come home and I would freak out about the dark. Um, like for some reason, I thought
And
that, hmm,
that was not something you had before. That had
no,
not been something you had
no, not at
been
all.
afraid before. Mm.
No. I mean, sure, like I don't want to be like in a dark basement by myself or like in a dark alley, but like the darkness of my own house, freaked me out. So I would turn on all the lights. And I think I thought that my dad was just going to appear as a premonition and talk to me. And I was like, oh my God, a ghost. Like I didn't, like, what was he going to look like? A zombie? Was he dead?
Mm.
Was it going to, I couldn't wrap my head around this and I would sleep. I'm not even joking you, like, every single light in my apartment, like, even in the living room, all the lights were on. I don't know, like, for some reason, that was, like, what I needed to do to, like, even process what happened because I think the nighttime was the worst because it's when my mind was not distracted and I had to face the
Mhm.
reality of his passing, and that's when it was the hardest.
So by Yeah, because by you going back to work, it was one, you had been very busy before. It was not like you suddenly chose to let me get busy
No.
because I want to distract. It was already something that was part of your nature to be busy.
Yeah.
You were already at work before. It was not something unfamiliar, but it also just helped you not have to be in that sadness
Yeah.
all day long had you
Yeah.
stayed home.
Mhm.
So, so then, yeah, so tell us, and so then so you started going back to work. That was kind of how you started to cope, was just getting back
Mhm.
into the busyness. So, at what point did you start seeing then, because you said something so powerful, the standing in the ashes of the life I no longer basically had.
Mhm.
Um, so what started to kind of see, like, how were you perceiving your life at that moment now with this new reality? What was going on
Yeah.
in your mind?
I think coinciding with the lights, there was a lot of I would fall to my knees, like, I needed to be in, like, a hands and knees position, and I would sob, I would throw up, I would collapse, and I needed to be, like, grounded on all fours, and I think it was in that purging of emotions and loss I had to really unpack some of the other things that were really deep. A lot of trauma, a lot of patterns, a lot of what the hell was this for? Why? I would cry and I would just be like, why? And I would scream in the car by myself. I would scream on my hands and knees, why? And I would scream, "My dad is dead." Like, I had to scream it out loud as if it, like, it needed to resonate and bounce off the walls so that it would resonate with me that he was gone. So I
Mm.
think it was in that like purging of a lot of pain that it made me just say like, what was this for? Why? My dad was too dope. He was too great of a man, and maybe it had to allow me to understand that maybe I didn't appreciate him as much as I could have and build as strong of a relationship as I could have when he was here. So how do I honor him now? How do I like say I'm sorry, and how do I honor this man who was so amazing and more amazing than I ever gave him credit for while he was here? How do I do that now?
Mm.
And I think when I started asking that question, and it took me unpacking a lot of that like trauma and a lot of that miscommunication and a lot of falling outs with my dad for me to say, okay, like I understand where those come from, and I understand why I reacted and why he did what he did, and we all did the best we could at the time. And now here I am. And I forgive him for all of it. I forgive myself for all of it. And now what do I do? Because I love him and I want to honor him in ways that I couldn't. I was not able to. I did not have the tools, the capability, and the capacity to do that while he was here. So, how do I do it now? And I think when I started asking that question while crying on my hands and knees on my kitchen floor with all the lights on in my house, I was like, what am I doing? This isn't it.
Mm.
I'm not happy. I'm gonna, like, I have to honor my dad by like being brave. Because I was like, I'm brave as fuck. If I survived this, if I am able to pick myself up off of my floor, shower, and go to work and like be okay and not take my own life, yo, I can do anything. I'm brave. My dad
Mm.
taught, he gave me this. He put this in front of me and he died to show me that I am brave and that I can do
That
anything.
you were brave. Yeah.
I'm brave.
That you could stand up. Yeah, you could stand up now for yourself and for your own life and what you wanted
Yeah.
your life to look like
Yeah.
because you had already been able to face that. So,
Yeah.
what then made you completely do that 180?
I just wasn't, again, it was like, what am I doing? I can conquer anything. Why am I doing what I'm doing? Oh, because I'm afraid to piss people off. I'm afraid to say no. I've picked up all of those like
Mhm.
female people pleasing, like inherited reactions and responses to things like that aren't even mine. These are like generational shit that just has been bestowed on me. And I'm like, I don't really want this
Carried.
anymore.
Yeah, you
You
just
know?
carried it
Yeah.
with you.
Yeah,
Mhm.
for sure. Like,
Yeah.
so I'm going to break it.
It's
Uh,
other people's stories. It's other people's stories
absolutely.
that you just carried along. Yeah.
Absolutely. From
It's not you.
generation upon
So then
generation. So I was
yeah,
like,
and so then when you chose to broke that pattern, what was the first thing you did?
I quit. I quit my job. I mean, well, let me back up. I made the decision to quit my job, but I'll be real honest with you. I wrote
Mhm.
out a lot of sick time because I had like 4 months of sick time that I
Mhm.
wasn't going to get paid for, and I was like, nah, that's not going to happen. I'm going to get paid for 4 months, so I took a lot of sick time in that time. But once I made the decision of like, this is it, I'm not going back. Yeah, it was in like 4 months. I was just like, nope, this is not it. I'm out of here. I can't do this anymore. And it came from a
When you chose to
conversation.
do that, did you have a oh, yeah, yeah, go ahead.
Oh,
Sorry.
yeah, I no,
Can you hear me okay? Is my mic really low?
I think it's just my headphones, so sorry about that.
Oh, okay, okay. It
No,
might
we're
be
good.
no, no, it could just be that it's a delay. Okay, good, good.
um,
Yeah, yeah, tell us, tell us.
I didn't have an exact plan, but like I said, I was kind of teetering around with this fitness business and this side hustle. And I remember talking to my principal at the time, who I actually liked. I was like, "Oh, finally, someone who like isn't an ass and is like really competent, finally." And we were sitting down and he was like, "Angela," he's like, "You're not happy here." And I just burst into tears. This is
Mhm,
probably May of 2016, so like 6 months after my
mhm.
dad died, basically. And he's like, "You're not happy." And I'm like, "No, I'm not." And he's like, "What do you want to do?" I'm like, "I don't know." And he just looked at me like a dad, like a dad. And he just said, "Angela, sometimes you have to jump with or without a parachute." And I said, "You're
Yep,
right. You're right." And that's when I was
yep,
like,
you
"Yo,
build
I'm
it on the
brave."
way down. You build it on the way
Build it on
down.
the way
Yep,
down. And I said, "You're right." And it
yep.
was in that moment that I was like, "Yo, I got no parachute. I have no plan, But like I said, I survived this. I'm surviving this. Like, I'm
Mhm.
gonna be fine. Nothing in this world will break me. Please. Like, if I made all this money while I was like unhappy and broken, imagine what I could do as a whole centered, authentic person. I'm gonna make millions, you know? So I was like, I
Mm.
gotta get out of here. This isn't it. If any second my life could be taken from me and I could drop dead on the floor from an aneurysm, what the hell am I doing? I gotta get out of here. And I left. I
Mm.
quit. And I spent that summer because we get paid over the summer. And I was like, what am I doing? And I just kind of I planned. I had all this money in the bank because I was trying to live a life that really wasn't mine, like get the good job, and I was gonna buy a condo. And I don't know if anybody knows what the cost of living here is in Boston, but like, you know,
I know.
500,000, yeah,
I lived in Massachusetts.
yeah. Yeah, a
Yeah.
whopping $500,000 gets you like a 300 square foot studio. So like I was I was ready to like buy something and put a down payment, and I was like that's not really what I want. So I took a year
Mm.
and I was teaching fitness classes here and there, but I kind of took a retirement. And I saved enough money to live comfortably for a year. And I was like, I have a year to figure this out, and I'm just going to feel, and I'm going to listen to myself, and I'm going to try, and I'm going to fail,
Mm.
and I'm going to be okay. You know? So I took that
That's
pause for
so
myself.
beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you. I took a pause and a retirement to
So
get
beautiful.
away and
Mm.
regroup. What do I want now? What's this going to look like? Who am I? What's important to me? What do I value? What do I want to do every day? How do I make that happen? What's the plan? How can I execute something? Did that work? Wash, rinse, repeat. You know?
And then what after that year, then what evolved from that? You were still taking your fitness lessons. Now, your classes. Now, tell me a little bit because you had shared with me when we spoke
Mhm.
about that program that you had developed when you were in
Yeah.
graduate school.
Yep.
Um, so that started to evolve again a year later, or what
Yeah, so
happened then?
that's kind of what I ran with. So when I was in grad school, and like I said, I was just sort of something I was playing around with as like a passion side project, and I started running wellness programs at schools for teachers because I was like, this job sucks. Everybody treats you like shit. Teachers matter. So I created this class that was very like mind, body, soul centered, and I was running it like illegally in my classroom. Like we would move all the desks and teachers would pay me, which anybody listening, like that's not okay to do. Um, yeah, and they were just paying me like 10 bucks a class, and we had a class full of teachers doing this like boot camp and meditation. And I was like, you know what? I think I'm onto something. If people are paying me to do this, right? Like how
Mhm.
if they're paying me to do this, how can I continue to run with it, you know? Um Yeah, and then I was like, "All right, I'm gonna do this." So I got contracted. Now that I was no longer like an employee of Boston Public Schools, like I could go and work at schools and get paid. So I would get contracted and I would have teachers pay me or I would have the school pay me. So I started running fitness programs at schools for teachers in the Boston area.
That's so
Yeah, it was
Wow.
great. And
So
then
you're still linked because you saw the need. The thing is that had you not been in the school
right.
system for the years you were, you would have
Mhm.
not realized that that was the need,
Yeah,
a need for these teachers to also keep their sanity, and it just helped them be better teachers because they were having this
yeah.
hour. How long was it? 45-minute class?
Yep,
45
45
minutes?
minute class.
How long was the
45.
class? 45-minute class to regroup and then be able to be more present for those kiddos. So
Absolutely.
what an amazing, journey. So, yeah, it took you back to the school system even though you were
Yeah.
out of it as a regular,
I I do think
instructor, you
I
are now
do think it was like a
contracted.
natural
Mhm.
progression though, because I think as
Yes,
you're
yes.
pivoting, you keep like one foot where you feel comfortable, you know? And I was like, I knew that world. I
Mhm.
knew education. I knew the pain points. I lived it for almost 15 years, you know? So I think over time, again, as I continue to evolve and listen and pay attention and get to know myself and love and honor this newfound sense of self that I had coming from grief and coming from my dad and learning like what that meant, I kind of realized like I wanted to be as far away from education as I possibly could. And I love teachers. I think they're amazing human beings. And I think a lot of our systems, education, corrections, healthcare, all of it are very toxic. And I just knew when I had those conversations about what I value and how I want to feel, what I was doing didn't align with it. So I knew that it was time to keep moving and keep pivoting because I knew that like being in a school system like wasn't the right fit, you know? But again, I think it was the natural
So
progression
what was
out.
the next pivot?
I took the class.
Yeah, but it was that part of it. Yeah. Okay. So you
I
okay, go
took the
ahead,
class and
continue.
I branded it and it's called Sweat Remix and it's a remix of like hardcore boot camp and meditation and it's very mind, body, soul oriented and it follows the process of Zen Rage Heal. So Zen, we calm the mind, set an intention because everything we do shouldn't be just to do it. There should always be intention and purpose and meaning behind what we do. Like, why are we here? If we're going to set ourselves up to work out and we have 45 minutes to do something for ourselves, what's the intention? What will that look like, feel like, sound like? Let it take over your body and let's manifest it. Rage, work your body, like purge out anything that no longer fits so that that intention can fit into your energy space. And the same concept of being in that like uncomfortable, I got to do burpees for how long mindset is the same mindset that it takes to do the emotional growth, to do the healing, to go through grief. It's the same skill. It's the same level of
Mhm.
discomfort. It's the same mindset to say, this is uncomfortable and I'm still going to be here. And the last part is heal.
Oh,
So after we rage, after we're in that
that's so
discomfort,
awesome.
what do we do? Yeah, what do we do with it? Because I think a lot of people stop at rage.
Mhm.
They stop there. But
Mhm.
now you have this openness in your body. And without being protective of that openness and aware of that openness, you are just as susceptible to go back out into the world and fill yourself up with negativity, hate, toxicity, anger, insecurity, fear, and every other low vibrational energy that keeps you stuck exactly where you are. So without that meditative food for thought mindset mantra talk at the end of class, like that's what fills you up. That's what puts back
Mhm.
and patches those holes where we feel empty so that we are coming from a place of internal calmness and wholeness so that everything we need is already within us and there's no need to seek external validation. Like I got this. And again, so much of this Zen Rage Heal process came through my grieving process, you know? And it was just the best way that I could think of to honor my dad. This is my dad. This is what he taught me. This is what he's given to me to help change the world, to help change other people, to help change the way we look at ourselves as humans, to the way that we move with intention. So that was sort of how Sweat Remix came to be. And it started off as something I was doing so that I wouldn't have to correct student work and I could run a wellness program during my grad school thesis to a really succinct, meaningful, purposeful, and authentic way to honor my dad and to up the vibrational energy that this world needs so badly right now.
Oh, this is so, so good. How I'm like, can we take a class even if we don't live in Boston? Like, how does it work? Like, do
Yes.
you have any online programs? Okay, share a little bit about
Yeah.
that.
So,
And then I want you to share before we get off. Don't forget to share a little bit about the Big Sister coaching too.
sure. Yeah.
So tell me then
Yeah.
a little bit about the sweat remix.
So I was teaching it just kind of like building brand awareness like locally, you know. So I would go into gyms and I'm like, "Hey, I got this class. What is it? What do you do?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I just built like I didn't have a website. I have nothing." And I would just kind of like m- make my presence, my very big presence known.
You'd,
And
if you'd
that's
go to Shark Tank, they'd like kick you out the door. No proof of concept yet? What are you
yeah,
talking
nothing.
about?
I had nothing. I had nothing except like a persona of like Angela wears crazy pants and like a fanny pack. Does anybody who knows me, I love me a fanny pack. I hate purses. I hate backpacks. Give me a fanny pack. So I had a very like unique look. So I think my persona, my look, the way that I moved energy and the way that I moved
Presented yourself.
people,
Mhm.
yeah, just really got traction. And that's how I built the brand. That's how I built the name. Um, and then when COVID happened and everything shut down, as terrifying as it was kind of the best gift that I could have given myself, that the world could have given to me, because it allowed me to shift and pivot. And now, instead of being contracted
Again,
and working at
uh-huh.
gyms and stuff, I'm in control. So all of my classes are online now, and I even hired and trained a new instructor. So we're growing, we're scaling, and everything is all online. So you can take it in your living room. I have meditation. So there's a days of Zen meditation where you can just really get some clarity for the next 21 days of like unpacking what your trauma is, what holds you back, reshifting your mindset, managing your anxiety. Rage, work out with me. I have on demand workouts, and then I
Mhm.
host 3 classes a week right now, um, all online on my website. And then I am building out, and I will be launching in October, which is a fully independent online course called The Transformative Guide to Being Epic. And it is everything that I have learned on how to be in this skin, in this space, how to cope, how to live purposely, how to live intentionally. And I've put it into an online independent course with videos and a workbook. And I go live with that in October. So Zen Rage Heal process is all over my Sweat Remix website. So anybody who wants to take a class,
Wow.
come through.
Wow. Well, I'll make sure to put that, all your data on all the info on the show notes so that people can go to your website,
Yeah, thank
and then
you.
also find you on Instagram and all that kind of stuff. But that is just amazing. Like just
Yeah.
that, really, really 180 that you
Hmm.
did and the passion and I can't imagine you having been the person that you were describing yourself to have been before because
No.
like that anger or something, like
Right.
I just can't imagine that because that is not who I know right now.
I
And
know, but it's
so
I
it's
think when we look back
crazy.
on
Yeah.
many iterations of ourselves, we do the best we can with what we have at the
Mhm.
time. And at the time, that was the best that I could
Yes.
do. But in this evolution, I quit 3 years ago, and I have completely changed my life and how I view the world and how I show up and how much I love myself. And I think, like,
Mm.
why I've chosen to even pivot a little bit more, like, as my brand and fitness has become more sustainable, I think now I'm finally in a place as a human being who is still processing her grief, will always be processing her grief, but is ready to have
Yes. Yes.
bigger conversations about it. And when I launched my newest venture, which is Big Sister Coaching, um, this is for women who were just like me, who have been miserable, angry, repeating toxic patterns, and just like on the precipice of wanting something more for their life, but are opening up their toolbox and seeing that there's a Jolly Rancher in there and maybe a couple paper clips, and they don't have what they need to jump off the cliff with or
Mm.
without a parachute, you know?
You,
So,
you mean they can unless they're MacGyver, they can do something with that
yeah,
paperclip
and
and
even then, that's debatable. He always caught something on fire. You know what I mean? Yeah.
True, true. Oh, so yeah, so you're there to be part of that. You're there to be in their toolbox. You're there to be able
Yeah.
to give some of these
Yeah.
tools that have worked for you for people that are
Absolutely.
going through that grieving
Yeah, and who've
process.
experienced, like,
So,
a major loss, whether that is,
yes.
like, the loss of their job, the loss of their a loved one, or the loss of their self.
In major transitions in our life, even happy ones, because
Yep,
there's still a sense of losing who
yep,
you were, of that identity component that's there. So I totally can relate to that. And it's so interesting because I thought I was like, oh, maybe I'm the only one that thinks this way. And no, I'm not the only one that thinks this way. The more I have these
yeah,
conversations openly about grief, I realize that so many other people believe that way as well, that grief, happens in many areas of our life.
right.
So in that way, then how long have you been doing Big Sister coaching then? So 3 years with Sweat Remix, Big Sister coaching. How long has it been
Um,
with this venture?
it really just new, like, I started it in COVID, like I said, when things paused, I was like, "Oh god, my body can
Oh,
rest for a minute." You know? Like, I was
yeah.
teaching, like, 15 classes a week, girl. I'm 39
Oh,
years
yeah.
old, like, we're not. You know what I'm saying? Like, we can't do this any this is a young girl's game. So, I was like, "What where am I?" Like, when I started this, I was just so eager to be, like, out and about and active and moving, and again, as you listen and you continue to pivot, like, where my heart and my soul is speaking to me to have more honest, connective, and vulnerable conversations that expand beyond fitness. So that's like what I've learned in
Mhm.
COVID and in quarantine, is that I've pivoted again and like following my heart to say, hey, you don't have to suffer like I suffered. I fucking suffered. I spent the majority of all of my 20s and the majority of my 30s suffering. And God, if I could have these conversations, if I could be that big sister, I don't have a big sister, but if I could be the big sister to help someone else, just give you the tools to say, hey, girl, if and when you're ready, here's what I can offer you, and you got this. And all it is just being able to activate the tools that you now have in your toolbox that I sure as shit didn't have, that I had to suffer to get, you know?
Mhm. That you had to go through a major grief
Yeah.
moment like your
Yeah. And
dad
it was
to be able
coming
to
out
even
of the
just,
grief.
like, awaken those. Yes. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
coming out of the way. Yeah, it awakened
Yeah.
the susceptibility to these
Hmm.
tools that you probably had. That's the thing, a lot of these things you had, you
Oh,
just
it's
had
already within
to
you.
be
It's
able
already
to
within you.
awaken them. Yeah, yeah, you
Yeah.
just had to awaken them.
Yeah.
That's
But
all
you
it
can't,
is. It's like
you
a little
can't
trigger.
even, it's like cleaning out your closet. Like you can't make space for something new until you get rid of the stuff that doesn't work for you
Yeah,
anymore.
yes, yes,
You know, you don't wear that
yes.
anymore.
It
Why are you
it
keeping that? It doesn't fit. It's got stains. Throw it out. Get rid of it. Give it away. It's not yours. Make space. You know?
Mhm,
So I think it wasn't until
yes.
grief forced me to make some serious space in my life, so then I could start filling up my closet with new cool shit.
Awesome, awesome. And now relationships wise and so forth too, like has your circle changed a little bit? The friendships, family, all the dynamics, how have they changed since you've kind of shifted or
Oh,
basically awakened the
everything.
real Angela?
Everything. Because, like you just said, you can't imagine that person that I said that I was, like angry, reactive, like
Mhm.
negative. I mean, you don't attract what you want, you attract what you are. So that was my circle. So as I continued to
Mm,
grow, that didn't serve me anymore. I didn't want to be in that space. I didn't like those people. I didn't like that feeling. I didn't like, it was toxic, and I just didn't want that anymore for my life. So I spent like a year kind of getting rid of some people and shifting and moving, and now the people that I have in my life are like a whole new ball game of folks.
mhm. Up leveling,
Yeah,
yeah, a
yeah,
little
we
bit,
have
yeah. The
they've
energy,
also
yeah.
been through something. I have friends who've had
Mhm,
some really gritty situations in their life, not necessarily loss, but just some really trying situations that have allowed them the space for real, honest empathy, because that is a non-negotiable. Because I think when you're going through grief, that is the one thing that you definitely need. And until you've gone through a situation that requires you to need empathy and therefore give empathy, you can only meet people as far as you've met yourself. So if you haven't gone through
mhm.
anything to really need that empathy, then there's no way that you can give to me on the level that I need and that I'm able to give to you. So my circle has definitely shifted, and the roots are deep. The roots are deep. It's small.
And that is in such a short period. Yeah, but it's such a short period of time. That's just the beginning of
Yeah.
what it's gonna continue to go because it's only been in the last 3 years, right, that you've kinda started to make these change well, it's been almost 5 years since your father's passing, but in terms of, like, really making all those shifts, 3 to 4 years or so that you've been making these changes,
Yeah.
imagine what is to come still.
Yeah.
Imagine what is to come because
I
as you
can't
start
wait.
kinda clearing those energies. Yeah, it's so exciting.
I can't
Well,
wait.
it's awesome. It is so amazing. It's amazing, like, to be able to have that hope, like, it's so early on, even still after his death, that you can already feel grateful for the life you have now and for the life you had too, because had you not gone through
Yeah.
that,
Yeah,
you
he
would
was
not be who you are,
this
and
was
where
the
you are now.
the greatest gift. I mean, my father was not very good at giving gifts. I'll just tell you this story real quick. My father, God bless him, he had every year I was like, why does he buy me like the ugliest shit? Like golf stuff. I'm like, Dad, like, I don't, please. It would be like a golf,
Golf.
like a paperweight. like a golf shirt. He's like, "That's a nice shirt. It's Tiger Woods." I was like, "Dad, I don't care. Like, I don't want this. Thank you, but I don't want this." Come to find out, my dad, like, didn't go to the mall. I don't think my dad even knew what Amazon was, like Fred Flintstone, like, he didn't know. My freaking father bought all of your Christmas presents and all of your birthday presents at the pro shop at the golf course. That's where he shopped. I s like,
Because that's where he lived.
that's where
That's
he
where
lived.
he
Yeah.
lived, so that was the only store he'd go through, yeah, and if he lived in those clothes, he figured others could live in those clothes as well, or have a paperweight that was a golf club or a
Like,
golf ball,
honestly,
even if they didn't play golf.
yeah. So, like, the year that he bought me the Christmas presents, obviously, before he passed away, and my stepmom gave them to me, and they're in, like, the Cranwell, like, pro shop bag, and that's when it dawned on me. I was like, "He's been buying me stuff from the
Mm.
pro shop my whole life." Like, you know? But like I was saying, so he wasn't necessarily, like, the best physical gift giver, but I will say that this is
Yeah.
the best gift that my father has ever given to me. I think it's the most precious gift that a father can give his daughter, is to teach her how to live, because I wasn't living.
Mm.
He taught me how to live.
Do you feel him? Do you feel his in the things you do you feel how you were saying,
Mhm,
like, you were kind of feeling those taps in
mhm.
your life? You felt several times in your life like a tap, like you should have kind of gotten out of certain situations. Like, for example, when you were working and kept on
Yeah.
doing something that was not your
Yep.
soul's calling. Do you feel those comforting kind of little taps and little messages or things through your life now?
I don't think they're very fleeting. I think it's just like, it's very consistent. Like, I'm him. I didn't notice it
Mm,
as much when he was here, when he was alive. Like, I didn't look at my dad and say, "Oh my god, I look just like you." I didn't see it. But I look in the mirror now and I'm him. I have his
mm,
eyes. I have his face. Like, I'm him. I do his mannerisms. Like, again, I didn't pick up on these things while he was here, but, like, I'm Nikki Gentile's daughter. Like, he's me. We're the DNA. This is the energy.
mm.
Like, he doesn't send me messages. He lives in me. He lives through me. So I don't feel like I get these, like, signs every day. I just know that he's me. I'm him.
Yes, like, you feel that connection
Mhm.
always. It doesn't have
No.
to be just picking up a phone and calling him like it was before. It's just that
Right.
constant knowing
Right. I'm
that you
him.
just are carrying this energy with you all the time. Yes, I
Mhm.
completely can relate
All the
to
time.
that. That you're just yeah,
Yeah,
it's
I
like,
mean, look, like, I would
wow,
love
it's
to
so
have more
beautiful.
dreams. I would love to have, like, I've had one dream, you know what I mean, where I felt like my dad was there. I would love to have those. And I also think, like, this is a pretty magical place to be too. He's here. He's me. He's in
Mm,
me, you know?
mhm. Oh, so beautiful. Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much, and for honoring Nikki Gentile, as
Yeah.
well, by sharing your
Thank you.
story, his story through you, and for all the things that you are doing now of paying it forward and making everybody else's life a little bit better just because of the things that have been birthed through this, all the things that have been birthed through the ashes that you were saying at the beginning,
Yeah.
standing in the ashes of what your life was once and then shifting completely. And you are brave. You are brave. And the fact that you chose to leave your job, the fact that you chose to pivot and pivot and pivot and keeping on stretching into what your potential is. And I think we have yet to really see what it
Listen,
fully is yet. And you're just beginning. You're just beginning.
I have on my I don't know if you saw my Instagram post today, but I have, like, all my
No.
manifestations, like, on Post-its, like, on my wall, and I am meeting Oprah. Like, I have written it down, what I'm wearing, what she's wearing, what we're talking about. Like, that's happening. It's already in motion. It is
That
already on its way to me. I know it.
That is so I'm gonna have to look and I'm gonna have to look at that. I dreamt with Oprah one time. I dreamt with Oprah, and it's like, and I was like, oh, and it was so. I was actually so comfortable in her presence in my dream. It was not like starstruck. I was
Yeah.
really comfortable. It was that when I woke up, I just felt like, oh, I just hung out with Oprah in my dream, and I
That's what
actually
I
did
mean.
was
Like,
not
hey,
starstruck.
girlfriend, like sitting
So
down
I.
at your kitchen table having a coffee, you know? That's what it is. So, yeah. Like,
That's
we're just
so
gonna kick it.
awesome.
Like,
Well,
maybe
I'm
Michelle
gonna
Obama
look.
will be there. I don't know. I don't know.
Just hanging out.
Just
Just hanging
chilling.
out. Yeah. They're taking your class, girl. They're
Oh my
taking your
God.
class. They're probably taking your sweat remix
That's it.
class. Who
That's what's
knows?
happening.
I
Yeah.
bet Michelle will do she'll do a little playlist. She does the Spotify playlist. I think there's some Spotify
Yeah, yeah,
playlists
yeah,
that
yeah.
Michelle
They do
Obama
that.
does. Yeah,
I'll
so she'll
take
probably
it.
have her own, like, she has her work. Yeah, she'll do her sweat remix playlist of what
Perfect.
songs she listens to while she's doing her sweat remix.
Michelle Obama, if you
Yeah, that's
listen
it.
to this, I will gladly use your playlist at class. So just come through, okay? Thanks.
Perfect,
Well,
perfect. You
thank you
see
so
here, we're
much.
manifesting even more.
That's it.
Thank you.
I
Thank you, my dear.
appreciate you having me on here and continuing to open the door and to hold space in this platform for us to share stories about loss and moving through it and finding our purpose. Like I'm so appreciative. I'm so grateful to have met you and to connect with you and for you to do this for me, for my dad, and for every other grieving human on this planet. So thank you so much.
Well, at least whichever other grieving human that ends up listening to the podcast. So whichever other grieving human that listens to the
They will.
podcast, I know that they'll get a lot of knowledge from what you just shared. And it's just not and not just about you don't have to go through necessarily something as hard as you did in order to really be in tune with who you are, right? It's just a matter of
That was
hearing
my
those
story.
taps and like
Yeah.
on the shoulder. Yeah, that
Right.
was yours. Yeah,
Yeah.
and others they will kind of be like, "Oh my gosh, yeah, I felt those taps. I felt those taps, and I have not listened." So just listen. That's really
Yeah.
the aha kind of moment, as Oprah would say, my
Yeah.
aha moment.
Listen and be
So
brave and
thank you
just
once
jump.
again.
That's it. Listen,
Yes,
be brave,
yes,
just jump.
jump and build the bear. Yeah,
That's it. Build that shit
build
on the way down.
the parachute with the paper cut and the Jolly Rancher in your purse.
I, yep, that's it. You open your toolbox, you're like, yep, it'll all make sense. Now that I said that analogy, people are going to be like, oh, I get it now. I get it.
I love it. Thank you once again.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you again so much for choosing to listen today. I hope that you can take away a few nuggets from today's episode that can bring you comfort in your times of grief. If so, it would mean so much to me if you would rate and comment on this episode. And if you feel inspired in some way to share it with someone who may need to hear this, please do so. Also, if you or someone you know has a story of grief and gratitude that should be shared so that others can be inspired as well, please reach out to me. And thanks once again for tuning in to Grief, Gratitude, and the Gray in Between podcast. Have a beautiful day.